Okay, the Fact Tracker Magic Treehouse Pilgrims book. Chapter 2, The New World. The ship was now anchored off the coast of Cape Cod. The Pilgrims climbed in a long boat and rowed to shore. They found a country full of woods. Although there were many native villages in the area, the Pilgrims did not see them. All they could see was wilderness. Once on shore, the women pulled out their washing tubs. They washed clothes all day. The children were free to run and play. And the men began making plans to explore. They needed to find fresh water, and they were eager to find a good place to live and plant crops. Exploring Cape Cod. A soldier named Miles Standish was chosen to lead some of the explorers. As they were scouting around, they came across a group of native people. The native people ran back into the woods. It says native people had lived on Cape Cod for thousands of years. So later the explorers found a basket. It was full of corn kernels. The corn had been saved by a native family. Miles and his men thought it would be good for planting. They took it and planned to replace it or pay for it later. Exploration continued on the Cape, and the Pilgrims could not agree on a good spot to settle. The weather got colder, winter was settling in, and people began to get sick. They were running out of food. Here it says they named this place Corn Hill, and 4 people had died by the time the Pilgrims reached Plymouth. So the Pilgrims stole more from the native people. The natives were wary and often ran away when they arrived. Some Pilgrims felt bad about stealing. Later, they tried to replace some of the things they had taken. The Pilgrims decided that the Cape Cod was not a good spot. The water around the Cape was too shallow. Ships could not anchor close enough to land to unload supplies. The Pilgrims were worried there were too many native people, and also worried about having enough fresh water. They decided to look elsewhere. Master Jones's map. The Mayflower's master, Christopher Jones, had maps of the coastline. They were made by a man named John Smith. He was the leader of a group who had settled in Jamestown, Virginia. Later, John Smith had sailed around the coasts of Maine and Massachusetts. In 1614, he made maps of what he had seen. Prince Charles of England looked at the maps. He named this part of America New England. It says this is John Smith's map of New England. This is the Cape area. Plymouth. In December, several men set out in a small boat called a shallop. They were looking for a place one of them had seen before. A storm whipped up. Winds and tides carried the boat toward the shore, and the men found themselves in a good harbor. This was the spot they were searching for. This is Shallop's route, Plymouth. The Pilgrims landed at Plymouth. To their delight, they found fresh water river. They found cleared fields, and they saw no native people. It seemed the perfect place. They hurried back to the Mayflower. Captain Jones checked his map. Sure enough, it showed the harbor. The king had named it Plymouth, after a town in England. The Mayflower arrived there 3 days later. Plymouth was the site of an abandoned native village. Plymouth Rock. There is a legend that the Pilgrims first stepped into a certain rock when they landed. The rock actually exists. It's called Plymouth Rock. Even today, many people believe the legend of Plymouth Rock, but experts are not so positive that that story is true. Here it says a legend is a story that is handed down over the years. In 1774, a group of men tried to move the rock to a special place in a town of Plymouth. The rock cracked in two. 60 oxen dragged the top half to the Liberty Pole in Town Square. In 1834, they moved it again, this time to a museum in Plymouth called Pilgrim Hall. Later, the rock was moved several more times. Today, it sits near the water, the top half cemented to the bottom. Over the years, people have chipped away at Plymouth Rock. Everyone wanted to take a piece for themselves. Now it is 1/3 of what it used to be. An iron fence protects the poor rock. Over 800,000 people visit it every year.